In a meeting of millionaires, only the humble housekeeper understood the sheik's secret message. The grand estate stood like a jewel in the night, its towering gates guarding a world few ever touched. Inside, chandeliers dripped golden light, painting the marble floors in gleams that dazzled and dazzled again. Silk walls whispered with wealth, and the air buzzed, low, electric, filled with whispered deals and silent threats. Tonight, this palace was no place for simple folk. Posh voices, sharp suits, and secret glances filled every corner. Eleanor moved like a ghost among titans. Her plain uniform was a faded shade against the glowing opulence. She dusted a silver tray, her fingers steady, but her eyes sharp, soaking in each flinch, every twitch, every stolen glance. The billionaires laughed too loudly, spoke too fast, and plotted in shadows thick enough to choke on. And through it all, Eleanor carried a tight knot in her chest, memories she never let surface, but that made her alert to every change in the room's murmur. In the center, the enigmatic Sheikh Al-Farid took the stage. No one really knew him well. Rumors slithered like smoke, powerful, elusive, dangerous. As he spoke, his thick accent colored his words in mystery. But it wasn't the meaning of his sentences that chilled Eleanor. It was the way his hands moved. Subtle flicks of his fingers, slight tilts of his head, barely noticeable shifts in his stance. Hidden behind polite sentences were warnings only someone watching for the quiet code could see. Most guests nodded or exchanged knowing smiles, too busy sizing up rivals, sipping rare wines, chasing their own ambitions. They missed the fabric of the message woven beneath the surface. But Eleanor caught it, sharp, cold, a pattern in his gestures like a map drawn in shadows, a warning cloaked as etiquette, a signal hinting at betrayal, ruin, a conspiracy vast enough to crush lives and fortunes alike. Her throat tightened. The past clawed at her, secrets she'd buried, debts she'd vowed never to pay. Right here, right now, she was the only one holding a match to this dark fuse. Should she tell someone? Tear through the glitter and greed to expose the truth? Or should she keep quiet, stifling the lump in her throat, and serve silently while everything crumbled beneath the golden veneer? The room's laughter slid into urgent whispers. The air thickened with unease. Faces tightened, eyes flickering nervously as the sheik moved on, a shadow of a smile hiding a storm. Eleanor froze for a heartbeat. Her hands trembled, but her gaze never faltered. The secret wasn't just words or gestures. It was a trap closing in, and she was caught in the middle. Who could she trust? Who was already lost? The weight pressed down, sharp and unyielding, as the night stretched on heavy with secrets. The grand estate held its breath. The game had just begun. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming up. And since you're here, smash that like button because it really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. The grand estate held its breath. The game had just begun. Eleanor's heart raced, her thoughts tangled in shadows. She focused on the sheik's hands, every flick like a needle pricking her skin. But then, it happened. An unexpected crash echoed through the hall. Glass shattered, sending splinters across the marble floor. Conversations died. Laughter vanished. Eleanor's breath caught as she turned toward the sound. A figure stumbled through the room, their face hidden beneath a hood. Their gait was awkward, a tightness in their movements that felt wrong. The guests shifted, confusion rippling through the crowd like a wave. "Who is that?" someone whispered, eyes wide with shock. The hooded figure reached into their coat. The air grew heavy, thick with tension. Eleanor's skin prickled. She was no longer thinking about secret hand signals or hidden ambitions. Her instinct screamed at her to run, but she stood frozen. The figure pulled out a small device, holding it up for all to see. "This is for all of you," they said, voice distorted, but carrying a weight of anger. "Tonight, the truth comes out." A collective gasp froze the room. Eleanor's heart pounded in her chest. What truth? What was happening? The sheik's eyes narrowed, his veneer of calm cracking. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, but the figure didn't answer. Instead, they activated the device. A screen were images, corrupt deals between the elite, handshakes coded in greed, tears and destruction left in their wake. It was a parade of betrayal, exposing faces she had known all her life. Then, shockingly, her own past unfolded. Eleanor's heart plummeted. There she was, standing beside her family years ago at some charity event. Behind her, a younger sheik was arguing with her father. She barely remembered, buried under years of heartache and secrets. But it wasn't a memory. It was the foundation of betrayal she didn't know she had. The audience erupted in chaos, horrified whispers cutting through the charged air. "Is that her?" someone muttered. Eleanor felt sick. She turned, searching for familiar faces. But now people stared at her with a mix of revulsion and fascination. She was suddenly their focal point, this ghost from the shadows. The sheik's expression hardened. "You will pay for this," he growled, and Eleanor watched disbelief ripple through the crowd. Everyone was shifting, backpedaling, recalibrating their alliances. She could see it, the tremors of panic in their eyes. Eleanor's mind raced. She wanted to scream, to deny it all. But how could she? The truth was skewering her, laying bare every hidden part of her life. The laughter that had once filled this grand estate felt like a distant memory. Now there were only accusations, jeers, and uncertainty. And just when she thought it couldn't get worse, the hooded figure pointed directly at her. "You, Eleanor, are the key. You hold the real secret." The crowd gasped more loudly than before, and she felt their eyes stabbing her, expectant, hungry. Eleanor's body trembled. What did that mean? What did she know? That lump in her throat grew, choking her with possible truths. Her past had tangled with this night in a way she never saw coming. Could she uncover the secret hidden in her own life, the one that tied her to the wealth and ruin swirling around her? The crowd was spiraling, and she was at the center. The weight pressed down on her, and uncertainty washed over this gilded gathering. She felt lost, caught in a web she never asked to enter. The night felt electric, every heartbeat a countdown. Was she ready for what lay ahead? Would she dare to unravel this truth, or would it consume her whole? Eleanor stood frozen, the eyes of the guests piercing through her. The air thickened with tension as the hooded figure spoke her name. It sent a shiver down her spine. The heat of shame burned on her cheeks, but she couldn't look away from the screen. It was a ruthless display of secrets, laid bare. Her past interwoven with the twisted fate of those seated around her. The crowd buzzed, whispers echoing off the gilded walls like angry wasps. Eleanor's heart raced, pounding like a drum. What else would they uncover? What else would they learn about her? Then, just as everything seemed to spiral, the doors swung open. A group of armed men rushed in, faces obscured by black masks. The atmosphere shifted from tense curiosity to outright terror. Gasps rippled through the room, many recoiling, stumbling away from the scene like startled deer. "Get down!" a voice barked, sharp and commanding. Chaos erupted. Guests screamed, scattering like leaves in a storm. Eleanor ducked behind a buffet table, heart racing, legs shaking. Amidst the panic, she caught sight of the sheik. His calm veneer shattered, revealing something darker. "Everyone stay calm," he shouted, but even his bravado faltered. "Calm?" a woman shrieked, her eyes wide with shock. "They have guns." Eleanor's breath caught as she crouched low, the taste of fear bitter in her mouth. The hooded figure still stood defiantly, device still in hand, trembling with rage and purpose. "You think you can silence the truth?" they shouted, voice echoing through the chaos. "This isn't just about you anymore." Before she could wrap her head around their words, one of the masked men seized the hooded figure, wrenching their arm behind their back. Eleanor gasped. No. The weight of the room shifted again, their revelation fading under the threat of violence. "Stop," Eleanor cried, the word escaping her lips before she could stop it. The chaos paused just for a moment, every eye turning, even the assailant's eyes narrowing toward her. "What did you just say?" one of the masked men asked, a tone of surprise in his voice. In that moment, Eleanor felt a surge of something unexpected. A spark. The playful spark of rebellion long buried beneath years of servitude. "I know what you're after," she declared, surprising herself with the courage that wrapped around her like armor. Silence carried her words. "They're hiding something. It's not just them." She glanced around the room, every pair of eyes wide. "We all are. This isn't just about the sheik, this." But before she could finish, another masked man fired a shot into the air. The sound cracked like thunder, sending everyone to their knees. Eleanor's heart sank. She knew she had unleashed something far greater than her own fears. A sudden explosion of light blazed from the screens. The video continued to play, but this time images morphed, twisted, revealing faces unseen before. The guests blurred into one another, their dark secrets now connecting. Eleanor felt the unraveling. Then one image pushed through the rest and she froze. The figure on screen was backlit, features obscured, but the familiar blue eyes sparked recognition deep within her. The light blues she once thought belonged to her long-lost brother, whom she believed dead. "No," she breathed. "It can't be. How?" The room held its breath again, the tension like a thick web around them. Friendships shattered, assumptions collapsed. Her past was more tangled than she dared to admit. The truth that had remained hidden was now clawing its way to the surface. A loud groan from the back snapped her back to the moment. One of the masked men had collapsed to the floor. Suddenly, whispers filled the room again, but they weren't frightened anymore. They were anxious, questioning, turning on one another. Alliances shifted, promises broke, and standing in the thick of it, Eleanor realized this was just the beginning. The floor was cracking beneath them, and she was right at the center of it all. What else did she not know? Who else was involved? And how did all of this tie back to her? The answers would come, one way or another. And deep down she felt that the truth would leave no one untouched. Eleanor's heart raced, a thunderstorm brewing in her chest. The screen flickered with images that held her past, and now all eyes were on her. The panic in the room was palpable, thick enough to grab, to choke. What else was out there? What more did they know about her? She could barely breathe, every gaze like a burning brand. Then the unexpected happened. A blinding flash lit up the room, blurring the chaotic scene ahead. It wasn't a camera flash, it was something much more dangerous. The crowd gasped, confusion rippling through, as the air shifted cold and electric. Eleanor squinted into the brightness, heart hammering. A loud explosion shook the very foundations of the estate. Glass shattered again, this time from the grand chandeliers above. People screamed, ducking, scrambling for cover. A deafening boom roared through the hall, sending sparks flying. Someone shouted, "Get out!" Eleanor stumbled, losing her footing. The last image on screen lingered in her mind, the blue eyes that felt so familiar. Had she seen them before? Now, danger swirled around her like a tempest. As the dust settled, panic erupted like a volcano. Armed men fell back, shields and smoke exploding across the polished floors. The masked intruders were caught off guard, dodging the shockwave. Eleanor stayed low, her heart racing as she peered through the chaos. And somewhere amidst the chaos, she caught sight of the sheik. He stood still, hands raised, voice slicing through the turmoil, commanding. "You have no idea what you're playing with. But suddenly, with an unexpected twist, the air around him changed. The sheik's eyes widened, brow furrowing in horror. His visage morphed into something Eleanor barely recognized, a mix of anger and fear. She felt a chill race down her spine. Before she could think, the hooded figure, a pawn forced into this deadly game, made their move. "This isn't just a spectacle," they shouted, voice filled with the fierce conviction of someone fighting against an unseen tide. "You've all been puppets in a play, dancing around secrets." The lights flickered like they were struggling to stay alive. Eleanor felt the tension grip her tighter, her chest aching. And then came the keystrokes, sharp, quick clicks echoing through the chaos. Another screen lit up, but this one was different. It wasn't just showcasing the sins of the elite. A live feed appeared, revealing a shadowy warehouse, and in that moment, Eleanor's breath caught. A figure was bound and gagged in the center of the frame. Her brother. "No, no, no," Eleanor gasped, horror flooding her veins. She never believed he was alive. Not after all these years. How was he here? Her brother was the missing piece, the one she had grieved over, the loss that haunted her every step. "Eleanor," the voice echoed, piercing through her shock. Syed, her brother, struggled against the ropes. "Please, you have to help me." The room spun. Faces of those who once were powerful men turned to weaklings. Gasps of shock filled the hall again. The truth was unraveling, weaving in and out like a wild dance. The sheik's mask cracked further, revealing a truth of his own, both twisted and layered. Everyone now stood on the brink of revelation, uncertainty clawing at them like angry spirits. Who had betrayed whom? The alliances built on trust and greed shattered in an instant, exposing the fragility of their world. Eleanor's heart raced, fueled by fear, by connection. She felt more alive than ever. "You are alive, Syed," she screamed over the din. But before he could respond, the scene on the screen flickered again, just as the armed men gained their footing. "Take the device," one shouted, pointing toward the hooded figure. The tension bristled, holding them all hostage. What did this all mean? Who had orchestrated such a terrifying return? And what lay hidden in the shadows? The storm had only just begun, and Eleanor was at the eye of it, teetering on the edge of chaotic truths, daring to unravel a mystery that could consume everything she held dear. The world spun around her, but she stood ready. Would she step forward, if only to find salvation, both for herself and for her brother? Only time would tell. Eleanor stood in the eye of the storm, the chaos swirling around her like a wild tide. The images of her brother flashed in her mind, mixing with the fear in the room. She could feel the panic rise, bitter and sharp. This was real. This was everything she had feared and hoped for, wrapped in one explosive moment. "Eleanor," Syed screamed from the screen, his voice strained and strained. "You have to find me. They won't stop." Suddenly, the ground shook again. Another blast, this time louder, harsher. It rattled the estate's foundations, sending a rush of dust up into the air. The crowd gasped, a collective gasp swallowed by fear. Sweat dripped down Eleanor's back as she felt her heart pound against her ribs. "Stop this." A voice cried out, but it was drowned out by the chaos. The masked figures exchanged rushed glances, confusion slicing through their hardened resolve. It was clear they hadn't anticipated this. The chaos their plans had unleashed. Then out of nowhere, a loud bang erupted from the back of the room. A figure stumbled into view, this time not hooded, but dressed in an expensive suit. An air of familiarity cloaked him, though Eleanor couldn't place it immediately. "Enough," he roared, and the crowd quieted, eyes darting toward him. "This ends now." His tone was commanding, filled with authority. Her breath caught. It was Rami, the sheik's closest advisor, but he seemed different now. Fury simmered beneath his polished demeanor, an unsettling wildness lurking in his eyes. "Rami, what are you doing?" the sheik spluttered. Confusion and disbelief etched on his face. "Doing what needs to be done," Rami replied, stepping forward with purpose. The air shifted again, tense electricity crackling at the surface. You've played your games long enough, Al-Farid. I won't let you drag us down with you. Eleanor's heart raced even faster. What was happening? Who was betraying whom? Rami, this trusted figure, now spoke like a man possessed by revenge. The truth isn't just in those videos, he continued, voice gaining strength. It's in the blood we've spilled, the alliances we've smashed. You think you can hide behind wealth and power? You don't know the half of it. What do you mean? Eleanor whispered under her breath, feeling an urgent tug at her mind. What secrets were twisting in the shadows? Rami squared his shoulders, his gaze turning to Eleanor, eyes locking on hers with an intensity that sent chills up her spine. You're the key, Eleanor, but not just to uncover what's hidden. You're the reason it all started. Gasps erupted again. The crowd surged, shock rippling like wildfire. Eleanor felt the world spin as if the foundations of her reality were crumbling. What? Eleanor breathed. No, I didn't. Your family. He cut her off. You've been kept in the dark. Your father made deals that turned our lives into this nightmare. He's the one who sacrificed your brother to save his reputation. Her whole world tilted. Shockwaves of betrayal crashed through her. Memories flickered in her mind, flickers of her father's conversations that had made no sense before. Eleanor's heart sank deeper. No, he wouldn't, she whispered, denial clawing at the edges of her thoughts. But suddenly the fragments fell into place, sharper and clearer. Syed was in danger because of her father, because of who they were. Rami stepped closer, voice urgent. It's all connected, Eleanor. The sheik, your family, all of us. We've been pawns in a game we hardly understood. You must choose now. Who will you save? Eleanor's breath caught again, realization hitting her like a freight train. Relationships reshaped, loyalties questioned. Everything, she believed, shattered between breaths. She was trapped. And just then, another gunshot rang out, the deafening sound slicing through the air. A figure fell to the ground, smoke rising. Eleanor's heart raced. Would it be her brother's life, her father's treachery, or her own uncertain fate that would take the fall next? A riptide of questions surged through her as the walls closed in. What would she choose, and would anyone, including her brother, be safe in a world built on lies? Eleanor stood frozen, shock paralyzing her as the figure on the screen screamed for help. Syed, the brother she thought she had lost, was alive, bound and in danger. The chaos around her intensified, a deafening wave crashing against the backdrop of tragedy. Another gunshot echoed, piercing through the tangled web of rising emotions. The crowd cowered, fear tightening its grip around their throats. Rami's booming voice cut through the noise, but the meaning of his words faded in Eleanor's mind, consumed by the urgency of her brother's plight. You're the key, he had said. But what did that even mean? Just as she tried to gather herself, the ground shook again, this time deep and menacing. Cracks spidered along the marble beneath her feet, each one a reminder of how fragile their world had become. Rami swallowed hard, eyes darting to the channeling darkness, and then to the flickering screen, showing her brother's frantic face. The panic surged anew. We need to get you out of here, he shouted at Eleanor, desperate eyes gleaming. The air thickened with fear and uncertainty, and she could feel it tightening around her chest like a vice. But before she could react, a thunderous roar split the air. The grand estate's towering walls trembled as if gripped by a living force. And then, with a shattering crash, the back wall collapsed inward, sending clouds of dust and debris swirling into the room. Everyone ducked and covered, a tidal wave of panic sweeping through the crowd. Rami stumbled, barely avoiding the falling wreckage. Eleanor's mind scrambled as she tried to process what the hell was happening. In the chaos, a new figure emerged. From the smoke, shrouded in darkness, but unmistakably powerful. It wasn't just any intruder. It was a familiar face from her childhood. a face she had thought she'd never see again. "Father," Eleanor whispered, disbelief flooding her senses. The figure stepped forward, eyes burning with intent, menacing yet oddly familiar. A hushed silence enveloped the room, as if time stood still around them. The guests, panic-stricken and uncertain, turned to look at the man who had haunted her memories, the one she had mourned, the one she believed responsible for her family's demise. "You thought I was gone?" he said, voice gritty and low. "You should have known better." Eleanor felt her heart drop into her stomach. This was not the reunion she had ever envisioned. "But how? Why?" she stammered. "Because I had to protect you. All of you," he replied, moving closer. The tension electrified the air. "There's more at play here than your brother's life, more than you've been led to believe. I have secrets of my own." "Secrets?" Eleanor echoed, confusion mingling with dread. Was this the truth she had been seeking, or a twisted game meant to ensnare her further? But before she could demand answers, a loud roar erupted through the crumbling estate. This time it was more than just an echo. Something heavy scraped against the remnants of the wall, a vehicle of immense size making its presence known. "Get everyone out, now!" Rami's shout tore through the chaos. The urgency was palpable. Everyone scrambled for the exits, but their escape was blocked by the massive figure of a military vehicle, bearing down through the shattered remains. Eleanor's mind raced, fear gripping her as the shadows advanced. "What the hell is going on?" she shouted, searching between the dust clouds for answers. And then, as the gleaming lights illuminated the wrecked room, it all clicked. Rami's face paled, and she caught a glimpse of something in his expression, a betrayal that stripped the last remnants of doubt away. Suddenly she realized, this was all orchestrated. The sheik, her father, their separate schemes intertwined with malicious intent. It was a web of lies, and she had been the pawn, the unwitting catalyst. Rami's eyes met hers, a silent question spinning in the chaos. Would she follow him, trust him, or would she stand back, caught in a storm of treachery? The truth was spiraling into an abyss, ready to swallow them whole. Could she confront this new reality? Were their alliances ever real? Or was everything just a game? The questions echoed in her mind, relentless, as the looming shadows grew closer, threatening to envelop everything she once held dear. "Eleanor," her father's voice broke through the din. "You have to choose, now, who do you really trust?" But with everything in turmoil, and the weight of choice heavy on her shoulders, one question lingered in the air. What terrible truth lay beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered? Eleanor stood paralyzed, the weight of her choices pressing down like a 1,000-ton anchor. The wreckage of the estate echoed with danger as her father stepped closer. His presence sent a chill through the room. "Everything you believe is a lie," he said, voice steady but thick with something else. Fear? Regret? She couldn't tell. "Why now?" she demanded, her heart pounding. "You're here after all these years? What do you want from me?" He half smiled, a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "I want you to join me, to understand the truth that has kept you in the dark." The urgency in his tone sliced through the chaos. The masked men were regrouping, and panic was tightening its grip on the millionaires scattered around them. "Join you? After everything?" Eleanor's voice trembled, both anger and disbelief coursing through her. Syed was in danger. Her entire world was collapsing. Yet here was her father, the very man linked to her family's destruction, asking her to side with him. "Listen carefully, Eleanor." He leaned in, urgency flickering between them. "There are bigger forces at play, powers you can't even imagine. Rami isn't who you think he is. You need to know the truth before it's too late." His words wrapped around her like a noose. She glanced at Rami. Was it possible? Had everything been a carefully orchestrated act? "Father, please," she pleaded, desperation rising. "I don't—" But before she could finish, the screen switched off, plunging the room into darkness. Panic erupted, screams blending with the sounds of chaos. Eleanor felt something shift in the air, a heavy weight of anticipation. Just then, a blinding flash erupted, brighter than before, and with the blinding light came a terrifying roar. A massive explosion erupted. The walls of the grand estate shuddered. Splintered pieces of the structure rained down like confetti of doom. "Get down!" Rami shouted, shoving Eleanor behind a nearby table as debris fell around them. Time slowed, a cruel hand tightening around her throat. As the dust settled, a figure emerged from the haze, stepping through. The debris as if untouched. It was the hooded figure. Only now their hood was down. Eleanor gasped. It was her mother. "Mom," she whispered, disbelief slicing through her. Her mother had been gone for years, the woman who vanished and left shadows of questions lingering over Eleanor's heart. "Eleanor," her mother said, eyes wide, filled with something that could only resemble either fierce determination or regret. "You must listen. Your father doesn't know everything. He's kept things from you, things that you need to remember." "What are you talking about?" Panic clawed at Eleanor's chest. Memories of a childhood filled with secrets and closed doors flooded in. "You have a power, Eleanor. A power to disrupt everything. This estate, the sheik. Your brother, they're all part of a bigger game." Tears brimmed in her mother's eyes. "You're not just a pawn. You've been chosen." Chosen? The concept sent her heart racing. Was she part of something much larger? Then Rami's eyes narrowed, his voice low with suspicion. "She's lying to you." "Stop," Eleanor shouted, her voice rising over the noise. "You all are speaking in riddles. What's at stake here?" The look on her mother's face shifted, an urgency flickering behind her gaze. "It's about Syed. He is the key to breaking their hold. He's been covered up, hidden, but he also holds the truth." Eleanor's breath hitched as her mind tumbled. What truth? Just then an ominous rumbling sounded again, and the estate shook violently. A crack opened underfoot, threatening to swallow them all. "Father!" she shouted, but he had already stepped back, eyes wide in horror, revealing a flinch she had never seen. And that's when she felt it, a pulse of energy around her as if the ground was alive. Instinctively she reached out, and to her shock, the crack began to close, sealing itself as if responding to her. Everyone stopped, faces etched with disbelief, as the ground beneath Eleanor shifted to her will. Was it real? Was she truly capable of something so extraordinary? Her mother's eyes glimmered with hope. "You're not just part of this chaos, Eleanor. You can change the fate of everyone in this room." But then, just as quickly, reality hit. The looming shadows were no longer just her father, Rami, or the blurred figure from the screens. New dynamics emerged, unseen alliances tangled like wires. "Eleanor," someone screamed from the dark, "don't do this." Fingers shaking, she stared at the faces around her, the fear, the guilt, the truth lying just beneath the skin. A wave of adrenaline surged, breath catching in her throat. What had she unleashed? What truly lay beneath the estate, buried in secrets and shadows? And more crucially, who would she trust as everything shattered around her? Eleanor felt the energy pulsing through her. The crack beneath her feet sealed gently, yet tension hung in the air. Like thick fog, every eye in the room was on her, and the weight of expectation pressed down like a lead blanket. She could feel her heart thrumming, a chorus of urgency and fear. Her father's gaze was fierce and calculating. "You have to join me before it's too late." The desperation in his voice sent shivers down her spine. Did he truly believe he could still manipulate her? But just then, a deafening crash silenced the chaos momentarily, drawing everyone's eyes back to the entrance of the grand estate. The door burst open, and figures poured in, more of those masked intruders. But this time, they weren't alone. They were flanked by men in tactical gear, faces devoid of any expression but determination. Webs of panic wove through the guests, their eyes darting uncertain. "Get down," Rami shouted, instinctively protecting Eleanor. She noticed him, muscles tense, readying to shield her, a flicker of loyalty in this storm. But that flicker was quickly eclipsed by the looming shadows. Then, moving fluidly through the chaos, a single figure emerged from the crew of intruders, confident, commanding. It was the Sheik Al-Farid, his demeanor transformed. This was not the man who had stood and commanded respect mere moments ago. Now, he looked unchained, wild, a tempest ready to consume everyone in the room. "No more games," he bellowed, and the crowd recoiled as he brandished a gleaming object in his hand. A small device that glimmered ominously under the shattered chandeliers. "The truth comes out tonight, one way or another." Fear gushed through Eleanor, but it was never meant to end this way, was it? She fought to focus. The glimmer of the device drew her attention, pulling her in like a moth to a flame. What was it capable of? Then it happened. Before anyone could react, the device flickered to life with a sharp snap. The screens around the room lit up again, flickering images flipping through like a distorted slideshow. But this time, they weren't just videos. Photos, documents, connections exploded across the screens, exposing layers of betrayal woven deep into the estate's fabric. Eleanor's breath caught. She stepped back, raw disbelief washing through her. There were photos of her father, in clandestine meetings, shaking hands with known criminals, deals signed in shadows. The foundation of her life was collapsing in front of her. "Father, no," she gasped, but his glare turned searing. "You don't know what you're meddling in." The room trembled with tense whispers. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. But then, amidst the uproar, she caught a glimpse of something even more shocking. Syed's face plastered across the screen, but not as the terrified Goy she once remembered. This was someone entirely different. A manipulator. A player. "No," Eleanor breathed, horror squeezing her chest. Syed smiled knowingly, his blue eyes glinting with something she had never seen. Power, control. He was part of this world. The crowd gasped as realization ripped through them. Relationships twisted like smoke. Alliances shifted in a heartbeat. Rami's face collapsed into shock, disbelief etching deep lines on his forehead. The room was a fractured mirror as everyone reeled from the revelations. "Syed's alive," Eleanor shouted, heart racing, skin crawling. "What have you done?" "I was always meant to play my part," he replied, voice smooth, almost comforting. "And now, it's time for you to choose. Stand with the weak, or join the powerful." Betrayal hit harder than any bullet. Her father, Rami, whole lives at stake, all caught in a web built on lies, betrayal, and the cruel hand of ambition. "I won't join you," she yelled, feeling fire rage in her chest. "Too late, Eleanor. The choice is no longer yours," he retorted, his smile chilling. As he motioned, operatives moved in unison, shifting closer, forming an impenetrable wall around the room. It became clear, it wasn't just about her brother. The real game was much darker than she had ever imagined. The ground trembled again, but this time it was beyond her control. A massive roar echoed outside, shaking the very walls of the estate once more. Light shattered through the remnants of the estate. A helicopter? News flashes from the world beyond collided with their isolated chaos. The stakes had escalated beyond any of their understanding. Eleanor grasped for breath as everything whirled around her. Her life shattered, her brother a stranger. Relationships formed on falsities, agendas laid bare. As shadows gathered, an urgency filled the room. One question lingered painfully in her mind. Who truly held the power now? Eleanor felt the tension crackle like static in the air. Sheik Al-Farid stood before them, ferocity blazing in his eyes, the device still gleaming menacingly in his grip. The drone of chaos surrounded them. She barely registered Syed's shadowy figure on the screen, a twisted version of the brother she'd lost, yet somehow so familiar. Treachery twisted her gut, and then came a shockwave that jolted everyone. The walls shuddered, this time louder. A deafening crash echoed through the air. The room vibrated, sending debris tumbling from above like rain in a storm. The crowd parted as a dark silhouette surged into view, weaving through the fallen pieces of luxury. "Get down," someone yelled, but the urgency washed over Eleanor like a tide. Before she knew it, her father was rushing toward her, hands outstretched, desperate. Eleanor, we have to leave now. But then the shadows split, revealing the figure from her memories. The figure she had mourned, believed lost. Her mother stood there, wild and untamed. I'm here to save you. Her mother's voice reverberated, but it held an urgency tinged with something darker. Mom? Eleanor gasped, tearing at her heart as disbelief ebbed and flowed. You can't be. But her mother cut her off, eyes wide, gripping Eleanor's shoulders. Listen, you have to choose your path. The ground quaked beneath them again, and shadows swarmed like dark smoke. The sheik's device flashed ominously, and the screen flickered to life once more. Eleanor's heart raced as she watched. New faces appeared, familiar yet distorted. What is happening? Rami cried, panic surging through him as the air thickened with tension. Then, the shocking truth erupted. This is your real family. Her mother pointed toward the screen, the faces morphing seamlessly into a web of betrayals. Eleanor felt dizzy with every image, their connections, their sins laid bare. Stop this, Rami demanded, but his voice faltered as he saw someone he never expected. A man tall and imposing appeared, a familiar silhouette, standing proud among the traitors on screen. It was her father, the father she thought had vanished, dressed in shadows, laughing, plotting alongside their enemies. What? Eleanor whispered. No, this can't be. Your father knew all along. Her mother's voice cracked, desperation leaking through. He's always been the orchestrator. No, it was a scream of disbelief. Everything was crumbling down. Reality twisted like a knife in her chest. You're lying. You're both lying. But as the images flashed through the screens, they revealed even more, layers of deceit surfacing through the haze. It showed her father shaking hands with those who had terrorized her family. Deals forged in darkness, both hands dirty, with blood. The truth dripped with cruelty. Everything you thought was a lie, the sheik boomed, holding the device high. This is where your destiny begins. The roar of chaos surrounded them, the crowd gasping, hearts pounding. Was her father the puppet master? Had he played her like a pawn, just to rise above everyone? Waves of betrayal crashed over her like freezing water. Then, just as it felt like the world might splinter into shards, Rami lunged forward, taking hold of the device. His face contorted, an odd look of understanding flooding through his eyes. No, this can't be the end. In an instant, a blinding flash lit the room before the device exploded, a searing light swirling chaos. Into the air, shrapnel flew, piercing through the shadows and revealing. Eleanor blinked against the brightness, and in that moment, she felt something shift. She turned toward her mother, who was covered in dust, eyes glowing still, but they weren't just fierce. They shimmered with something else, unexpected. Eleanor, don't listen, her mother shouted over the clamor. But it wasn't fear in her gaze. It was determination. Just then, the light cleared, shadows fading away, but something had changed, something deep within. Suddenly, Eleanor understood. The essence of her family wasn't just betrayal. It was a power greater than she'd ever imagined. Which meant, this was only the beginning. As chaos churned around her, new questions pulsated in her mind. Could she truly trust her mother? Was her destiny intertwined with those she thought she knew? And with each heartbeat, pieces of her shattered reality began to fit into a new picture, one that might change everything. What did the light reveal? And most terrifying of all, what would she become when the dust finally settled? Eleanor felt the air thicken around her, pulsing with energy she couldn't contain. Her family, her brother, the secrets, it was a storm spiraling wildly. The image of her mother, so fierce and determined, anchored her, while the shadows weighed heavy with betrayal. Eleanor, her mother's voice broke through the noise again. You're stronger than you know. Don't let them control you. As the chaos surged around them, instinct took over. Her heart thundered, clamoring for action. She stepped forward, centering herself despite the turmoil around her. The buzzing energy in the air felt like lightning at her fingertips as she glanced from her father's incredulous expression to Syed's cold smirk on the screen. "Enough!" she shouted, voice ringing clear even amid the confusion. Silence swelled, tension pulling taut. All eyes turned to her, anticipation thick in the air. "I'm not a pawn. I'm not your weapon." The ground groaned beneath them as if echoing her defiance. The distance between them narrowed. She could feel their shock ripple through the crowd. The masked men faltered, unsure. "Eleanor, think carefully," her father's voice, sharp, filled with warning. "Think carefully?" she echoed, heart racing. "You think I'll choose betrayal? A power built on lies?" Each word felt like a dagger. "No, I'm breaking this cycle." Her mother stepped beside her, both fierce spirits igniting the air with courage. "Together, Eleanor." Then it happened. A flash of connection surged through her, pouring from her heart into the very ground beneath her. The shuddering stopped, and a wave of calm washed over her. The crack in the floor sealed, but far more than that, it reverberated, binding. Faces shifted around her. Rami's determination morphed into something softer, lips twitching in disbelief. The sheik stumbled backward, eyes widened as if realizing he underestimated her all along. With newfound strength, Eleanor held her ground. "I choose to expose the truth." The words tumbled from her lips like a vow. She looked straight at Syed, voice steady. "And you can't take my will." The screens around the room flickered, images shifting into snapshots of their realities. Each secret unraveling, all their ties laid bare. Syed's confident facade cracked, revealing fear as the truth washed over him. "No, you're making a mistake," he shouted. But his words were hollow, trapped. "Your mistake was assuming I'd follow blindly." Eleanor turned away. The tide had turned, and with it, the power that had always been just beyond her reach. "I choose my own path." Suddenly, the lights flickered, one last time, illuminating the room as those in shadows began to see the truth. The masked intruders hesitated, exchanging glances, confusion spilling into uncertainty. The ground beneath them throbbed with possibility, shifting alliances blossoming, connections forged anew. One by one, people stepped back from the darkness. Guests who once thrived on power and deception now stood vulnerable, eyes wide, awakening to the chaos they had created. Eleanor felt a breath of relief as she glanced toward her mother, who nodded, a proud smile breaking through the weight of the moment. Together they danced at the precipice of change. They would rise from the ashes, reshaping their fates. Her father, defeated, stepped back into the shadows, broken, revelations sinking in. The crowd's tension began to dissipate, revealing tears and whispers. The legacy of his schemes lay exposed, unraveling like threads of an old tapestry. Silence lingered in the air. Hope sparkled anew. Eleanor turned to Rami, gratitude lighting her eyes. "Thank you for believing." "The truth always finds a way," he replied, a soft smile illuminating the uncertainty. And with that they faced the room together, ready for what lay ahead. As the dust settled and the echoes of betrayal gave way to hope, Eleanor felt at peace. She was no longer just a ghost drifting through the grand estate. She was a force of transformation. "Together," she whispered, voice firm, falling into the warmth of unity, a sisterhood of newfound purpose. In that moment, freedom surged through her, a tide of connection and strength. "Let's rebuild," she declared, lifting her head high, and she meant it. "Before you go, I want to remind you of something crucial. You have to subscribe right now so you don't miss any of the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button right now to feed the algorithm. We want to share this journey with everyone. Flood the comment section with your thoughts and theories about this ending. And most importantly, don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to see how this ends. Your engagement shapes this community, and together we can create something amazing.